They haven't published the account as the law requires. They haven't published it since 2015 up to today.
That's very worrying.
Very, very technically, it's worrying
For a state-owned
because
bank not
it
to
is
publish.
required that it should be published.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to BizTech on Ghanaweb TV with me, Maoli Aholimega. Last week we brought you part 1 of our conversation with the renowned banking consultant, Dr. William Ato Essien, and we spoke about developments in the banking sector pertaining to the Ghanaian economy in the last 2 years. We are back again with part 2 of the conversation where we delve more into the merger of banks and also other developments in the banking sector. Doc, it's been nice having you again. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing good. And you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. So we had a very nice conversation the last time with regards to developments in the banking sector. Now we want to zoom into some specific banks, which is we've had the news about ADB and NIB merging. Do you think the call is just at this current time of the economy?
Thank you very much, Maoli. Let me take you back a bit so that you appreciate the whole thing. Unfortunately for you, Maoli, I've worked in NIB for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So I had a lot of information from inside.
Okay.
But I won't use the inside information because that is a privileged information.
That's fine.
You know, NIB used to be one of the best banks. Once upon a time, I can assure you, foreign exchange, when it comes to foreign exchange, we were supporting timber and cotton. I think the late president, Rollins, may he pay tribute to him, he even made an announcement that a bank has supported Ghana Cotton Company and has brought $2.8 million worth of cotton. One transaction. He said it. It was NIB. I happened to be the person who actually did the project.
So it was a very profitable
Very,
bank.
very good. Because we had a cotton company in northern Ghana, which NIB was supporting. So when we got the LC from Netherlands, we went them and we supported them. And Ghana received $2.8 million. If you go to NIB record, that was about, I think, when I was there in 1994.
Wow, I've never known this.
Yes,
So it's very, very interesting to
I've
find
worked in the bank. That's why in Pineapple, for instance, because I was working in SSB chose me to be the project manager. Myself and my senior, Mr. Safo Kwasi, were the two people, the whole NIB, who took care of the pineapple in the Ghana Pineapple Expo Promotion Program. So for me, I've been doing it so I understand. I know why. And I've also written a book. Let me give you this. When it comes to international trade finance, I can conveniently, not boasting, I am the only Ghanaian who has written a book, International Trade Finance in Ghana, which is used by all bankers in Ghana who practice it to have to buy the book. Parties in Nigeria. So I know the international.
More like a guide.
Yeah, it's a book. A book.
I'd love to read that book.
Oh, you can go to the Ghana Institute of Bankers. They will show. I don't have a copy because they don't want to pay for revision.
Oh, don't worry, I'll look for it.
You look for it. So, what is happening in NIB is rather unfortunate. I think in recent discussions, I said that NIB problem is more of a governance crisis, corporate governance crisis. The simple that I said is that the bank governance hasn't been very good since when the late Dr. Yakranchi left. So from 2014, they started experiencing problems.
Financial challenges.
Yeah, so they haven't published the account as the law requires. They haven't published it since 2015 up to today.
That's very worrying.
Very, very technically, it's worrying
For a state-owned
because
bank not
it
to
is
publish.
required that it should be published.
Yeah.
Bank of Ghana, NIB has not published it again. So for me, when I started, I followed the story critically, and I realized that part of the problem has been corporate governance. Corporate governance that the board, the chairperson, the people they appoint to position, they haven't held the institution. So when the IMF report 2015 came, they wrote specifically that NIB needs to be supported. 2016. So I thought when this government came in, she would have
followed
throughout to complete it. But they kept silent until the IMF country report, recent one, talked about that bank should either be liquidated or merger or takeover or what have you.
It was even captured in in Ghana's the recent 17th bailout program.
It is there. That's what I'm quoting. They said we should do something about it. But bringing these two institutions together, looking at the current financial state of ADB, after the DDEP, if you saw the losses they made in DDEP, it's quite significant. So for them, they even have a challenge. And NIB has got a gargantuan problem. So when you bring the two weak institutions together, we have what we call the strategic fit. In takeovers and mergers, 1 + 1 should always be 3, not even 2. But the way we are going 1 + 1, it will go to -1 or -2.
That's a loss.
Because those two banks are very, very weak. And if they are weak and you bring them together, you are not helping them. I would have thought NIB would have been singled out, treated differently before even the IMF came to tell us. Unfortunately, people didn't take the story. They didn't take the whole issue. And they have made various, I can tell you that they've made various representations to government. I know petitions and reports to them that they should take, but nobody, until all the time, like Dr. Yamson said, we wait for the Bretton Woods to come and tell us that they are doing something wrong and we want to do it. So NIB and ADB merger, for me, it raises question. Because we are talking about two weak institutions. One that has got government contract debt that has been paid for 2.1 billion outstanding in the books of NIB. How would you package the 2.1 billion?
And who pays for that?
Who pays for that with a... And if you're going to pay for that in ADB, why don't you pay it here so that it will take salvage it? So when I heard about it and I read it from the IMF country report, I always been saying that this is not the best way to go around it, because if we don't take care, we'll be creating another mega banking problems or challenge for the sector.
Doc, let's come to just still on the ADB NIB merger. We created a development bank. There was the argument from most parliamentarians, especially on the minority side, arguing that if we have NIB, which is already a state-owned bank, why do we have to go and create another DBG, which is also another state-owned bank?
Thank you very much, Mauli. It's a very, very good question. Very good question. But you see, in 2003, the whole banking setup was changed. They brought one licensing called Universal Banking License. They took commercial banking license, they took development banking license out, and they dovetail it into one, so that you can be a jack of all trade, without necessarily going to Parliament to change the act that set NIB and ADB.
So there we have another constitutional
That is where I'm saying, because NIB was set by an act, ADB was set by an act. I've forgotten the act. So I would have thought that when the 2008, 2003, we're talking about universal banking, we should have gone to Parliament to address that issue before we use a regulatory caveat saying that practice universal banking. Unfortunately, the concept of universal banking, they copied it from Nigeria. Nigeria started 2000. But somewhere along the line, by 2014, they abandoned it. And then went back to the old regime.
The old regime, yeah.
Because in the old regime, you can classify this as a development bank. You can have this commercial, so you know how you regulate them. Unfortunately, because we haven't developed regulatory mechanisms for development banking, we thought it would be easy to use the commercial banking or the investor banking one. That is another area. Nigerians have gone back. You can check your literature. They're now licensing commercial bank, development banks, and have we. So when they were setting the DBG, I wrote a lot of paper. I wrote a lot of published paper in BFT, telling them that why don't they sit down and look at ADB for the Agric Bank and look at NIB Industry Bank so that we can reshape them. But they also had a view that NIB was already in trouble, no matter how much you brought in. And don't forget, the development partners had money in it.
Yeah, they have it.
The money they brought, yes. So they told them that you can't go and put the money in a bank that is sunk already. So that is the reason why. It's one of the reasons why they decided to form a new development bank. But I would have, from where I sit, I would have thought, would have do a proper due diligence and see how we can salvage NIB and possibly salvage ADB to keep focus on the demand banking. Because let me make this statement: no commercial bank or demand bank, universal bank will help the economy to grow. Because they are the short end of the market. Deposit are 90 days, 30 days. But in development bank, you need 10, 15 years, 10 years to stabilize the economy. So that you get a longer, those in pineapple could access credit, long-term credit to develop the pineapple. Those in banana, like in Kenya, as I told you, Kenya export $5 million worth of flowers every day from Kenyatta Airport. Every day.
That's a lot of financial return.
That is it. Even if the government gets a tenth of the foreign currency, it supports the currency. Unfortunately, when we are doing it, because I am in power, what I want to do, instead of giving, as I said, you bring competent people, very objective, people who can even critique you and make recommendation. But in our society, I think everybody think he's too wise for anybody to critique. But knowledge, I remember Kwankwanansi story. When he was going to climb the tree, it was in Tikuma who told him that, Dada, carry it at your back. So wisdom does not belong to one, but unfortunately, it belongs to those in power. So coming back to the main bank that they have, I have my own reservation. Because in my paper that I wrote, I told them how it's done. You don't do a demand bank doing everything. You take like
bits and pieces.
Like a Greek, the rice, for me, the rice and maize and poultry.
So you look at the focus.
You focus it. That is why Mexicans have succeeded. Let me tell you, Chile export paper, 10 billion to America every year.
Wow.
Their development bank focus on pulp using paper. Yeah. That's what they do. And they bring in 10 billion. Go and check. So you don't need to have a development bank that seems to be doing everything. You become a jack of all trades. By the time you realize, they have found yourself little here, little there, without making impact on the economy. But I would have thought that especially in rice and maize and poultry, concentrate on these three areas are great. We would solve some of the problems we are talking about.
Doc, very well said. Now let's come to some of the collapsed banks. We already know the background of some banks were collapsed, about 23 of them back in 2017. Up until this point, the Bank of Ghana used, I think, about 25 billion, if I'm not so sure. We've gotten to a point, we got CBG and all the other banks. We've seen the latest development with an arrest of a former CEO, William Ato Essien. Just quickly tell us, where is our banking sector moving towards? From your point of view, where do you see the banking sector?
Until the DDEP came, which hit the banks, I think the banks were on the recovery path. Yes. If you say that, I will say the bank was on recovery path. Because the Bank of Ghana, prior to the DDEP, set up some stringent, supposed to be stringent corporate governance and risk issues that has to be addressed. So there was a bit sanity. Who is the board chairman, the independent of the board, the independent of the executive, the non-executives, the committees that you have to set, how they should go, how they form. It was actually doing well, but you cannot say it was doing well, because as I've said earlier, if it was doing well, the risk aspect of the government bonds would have been spotted earlier. So it shows that we can have all the textbook issues, corporate governance, good corporate governance, but when it goes down, who is the chairman of the board? Who sits on the risk committee? These days, everybody talk about fintech. In my delivery at Takosombo, I've warned them. It is one of the best in financial inclusion, efficiency. But nobody is talking about the risk in fintech. One day you get up in the morning, somebody has hacked into your system, taking all the deposit, taking all your data. How are you going to address it? You are in a rural bank. So I was telling them that it is still good to talk about fintech, but don't forget about the risk. My concern, my area is about governance and risk. That's what I did in my PhD in finance. So I'm always attached to risk, because once upon a time, I'll tell you a story. Professor Ajimambedu Akosa, the top
Ghana Health Service.
Yeah, he was a chief pathologist at Charing Cross Hospital. People don't know.
Oh, I see.
Chief pathologist. And he told me, we went to a funeral and I took water. I said, Doc, this water I'm taking, is there a risk? I say, hey, the water has got risk. If you take the water and you're not able to take it out, you have a swelling in your kidney. So I have said that risk component in the banking, the reason why we find ourselves in DDEP, that I will say it and say it, poor risk management. There was no proper enterprise risk management or governance in the banks. So when it happened in 2014, when the crisis came, the government said he used 25 billion. Isn't
That
it?
was 2016.
2016, they said 25 billion. Some say 21.
Yeah.
Some say 21. Even that figure.
Yeah, the figure keeps changing.
Why should the figure change? Once you're a man, you're a man. Once you're a woman, you're a woman. But because you see, nobody has questioned the figures. Somebody in parliament should ask, Mr. Minister, can you tell us how allocations were made to CBG?
And to which banks?
Which banks, where did it go? That is why I said I falter some of them. I falter the parliament. Because they are supposed to have this oversight to challenge the minister. But if he comes and he says that 21 billion and one state is 25, nobody knows where the money is. And don't forget, some of them got bonds.
Yeah.
The GAT people got bonds. They didn't got cash.
Yeah.
You know their capitalization, they didn't get cash.
Yeah, they got bonds.
Some got bonds. And the bonds were also added to the bonds. The bonds were added to the DDEP. This is reliable information.
Extra risk.
Dangerously risk. Something you have had to show your capital as bond. Instead of you exempting them, they added it and restructured it. This one I'm speaking from fact because I have access to two of them from banks.
Wow. So does this place the banking sector, especially the banks like CBG, those that were created to sort of manage the assets of these defunct banks?
CBG is called a bridging bank. The bridging bank in literature is that a bank that is set up for say 5 years, and by the 6th year, it goes into the market, then it's sold to public. That is the concept.
Okay.
That is the concept. It is not meant to stay there as a public bank. What we should have done and done it very well, by this 5th year, CBG should have sold the public. And then the monies went in, government would have recoup it. That is what it's all about.
Because last year in their audited report, you could tell they were struggling, especially with the deposits and liabilities.
You see, because they were struggling, because if you look at the setup, if you're not giving the entire money cash and you're giving partly to bond, and the bonds were not tradable. You see, who wants to buy a government bond? Who wants to buy a government bond? So it became non-tradable, and when it's non-tradable, they cannot use the bond. That is why I find it very interesting. When you look at the Ghana Financial Stability Fund they are going to set, they are also talking that bond again.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you've gotten cash, why don't you give them direct cash or giving them bond? I don't know what the man is so enthusiastic about bonds. Because you see, those of us in investment banking don't think that when the bonds are not tradable, there's no need to give bonds.
Yeah.
Because nobody will buy it. If it was tradable,
the maturity periods are way too long.
If it was tradable, you take it to the market prior to the DD. Some banks stood their bond and said in secondary market. We could have done that. But now the climate is not good. So why are you giving bonds? So what I'm saying that the setting up of these institutions was supposed to be a bridging gap. But the way it's going, it will be lasting. It will be on a lasting position before it will turn into a bank that you can sell it. Because it's number one, they've been hit by the DDEP. If you look at their capital adequacy, they were the bank that were below I think -4%.
Yeah, they were very, very low.
How would they crawl from -4 to 1, 1 to 2, 3, 4 to 13? I mean, until that thing don't come.
Doc, let's just quickly come briefly to William Ato Essien. He was recently jailed some 15 years. He's one of the few people that have been jailed. Do you expect to see more people being jailed by the court?
In that case, I find it quite interesting. I find it quite interesting. Although he was part of the team that messed up the liquidity support, which has found him that position. But it looks like he couldn't get very good legal advice by going to make an arrangement, say, I will pay.
The restitution.
Say, when you say you will pay, then it is they will leave the other people and hold you. And unfortunately, they charge you with stealing. And when under criminal code, then you have to go to prison. It is very, very unfortunate. It's unfortunate that he had to go in. But what he did was not pleasant, because liquidity support is everybody's money. The money at Bank of Ghana. That's why I Bank of Ghana say that some people don't understand, because the money you took to them, Bank of Ghana don't make money.
Yeah.
It is everybody's taxes that come there. So if everybody's taxes go in and something goes wrong and they say you describe them that. That's why I find it quite contradictory. So when the guy misused the fund and he went there to claim that he will pay, it's exonerated, according to the lawyers I've spoken to. They say political case. According to the word, they call it political case.
Because the other two bank directors were discharged. Odonko,
especially Odonko and Odonko and your minister. Mensa Otebel.
Yeah, Pastor Mensa Otebel.
See, in corporate governance, that's why I said in Ghana you talk English. In any other country, when we say corporate governance, once you assume the chair of the bank, should anything go wrong, it goes on your head.
Because you sign off on almost everything.
Because you see, you cannot prove ignosia non excusa. Ignorance is no excuse of the law. It's not an alibi. Because once I said it when the case came in 2017, I find it unbelievable that he himself accepted to be a chairman. Because if you have no knowledge of finance, banking, accounting, it is not as he said it on, I think, social media. It is deposit, loans, income, expenses, expenditure.
Ato Essien himself was also a pastor. Fritz Gerald Odonko was also a pastor. So
yeah, Fritz,
there was that
Fritz is a very good friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
I taught him international trade for him to pass.
I see.
So when I have international trade at banking college, I used to bring him to teach.
Oh, okay. So at least they had some expertise.
I have always said that if God gives me a talent, let me tell you, if I have found my talent earlier, I will never be a banker. I would prefer sharing the word of God more. But you see, if you leave that ministry and come to another ministry where you don't understand the nuances of it, you're going to have. And the guy saw that. Maybe they don't understand. Fritz did understand because he's an old banker.
Okay.
He's a professional banker.
Okay.
When we say bankers, there are too many bankers parading. I am a professional banker. Sat the English exams, passed, and I'm certificated as a professional banker, like an accountant. He is. So he understands all that went through. But so when I was surprised, I saw that. I said, well, I don't know what is behind it. But ideally, if you look at the governance issues, the board, the whole board, including the man who has gone to prison, would have a case to answer, like what Martin has been saying. Martin Pebu, lawyer Martin Pebu. Yeah, people will have cases to answer. And you see, it doesn't make it easier for the cases that are pending. Yeah. Because they are not straightforward.
Yes.
Yes, they are not
straightforward. We have the UT case. They
are not straightforward. You see, they are not straightforward. They go there and they prove alibi. I don't, what you're saying, I'm not involved. But this guy, he admitted it. So that is the difference between the other four or the other 3 or 4 and this man's case. By going to admit it, the onus falls on your head.
Yeah, because you take the fall for that.
Yeah, you take the fall for that. That's why I find it quite sad. Not sad the way he's gone. Sad because some people have been left on the hook and he is suffering.
Okay, Doc, now we're wrapping up. Let's just come to government's reliance on T-bills. We've seen that, okay, a number of times, especially since the IMF bailout had come to play. Are these worrying times, especially for persons who wants to invest in T-bills? You
see, thank you very much. This is a very, very trying times. A man who had a bond of 19.3, payable of 5 years, could not pay. The same man is offering 33.1, a bill payable 1 year, and people want to go there and buy. And in my delivery recent, I said that I don't know whether Ghanaians do understand the risk aspect of these things. That's why you find 3 days ago, IMF has hammered that treasury bills should not be included because they saw the signals. So I'm not surprised when they go to Marrakesh, they issue a statement that treasury bills are not included. Because it looks like you need so much money, the revenues are not coming, the taxes are not coming. So you have to divert to treasury bill. And offering 33.1 for 1 year, you are crowding out to the private sector.
Yeah. In my private sector already get
in my speech at Akosombo, they all confirmed that, doc, these days we cannot get deposit for the rural banks because who will give you a deposit lower than the treasury bill, even if it's 3 months. 3 months is about 28%.
Yeah.
Can you afford to give 28%? And if you give 28%, why are you going to put the money in?
Yeah. And what interest are you going to get back?
So what interest? So that is the question that immediately he goes into the treasury as he did in the bond market. He also taking out the private sector to cheaper funds to support the turnaround of the economy. And yesterday I was there. I got a paper from a flash from BFT. I said this in 2021 that he was crowding out, and they brought me. And that was he was borrowing the bonds. Now he's on the treasury bills. And when you do that, there will be a slowness in recovery of the economy. The economy is already on downtrodden. So if policy rate is 30%, treasury bill is 33%, inflation is 38%. Who wants to go and lend money to somebody? So
it's risky.
Those who are even in business already will find a way of curtailing their borrowing from the banks. Because no bank is going to give you credit, the TB plus. No. They won't lend money 3 TB plus like TB plus 2. No. Because the risk premium and the cost of the staff in the bank, we factor in. So the minimum you can do, from 31, we can give you 40%. Are you saying that for every 100 cedis, you spend 40% to pay for overhead cost or for the... You can't. So for me, the earlier he sit down and look at the treasury, because when I did the debt exchange, I knew that the interest rate will drop up to 15%. Because when you do the calculations, from the 19 and the calculation, I saw that government intend to do 15% on treasury bills. But immediately we finished, it went to 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 28, now 33.1. I haven't checked today. Today it might even be 34. So when you do that, the recovery, there is a correlation between the recovery of the economy and the bank sector lending. And when the banks default, then you have higher NPL. And that higher NPL will also curtail the ability to give more money to people. That's why when people say that the economy is turning around, I have my doubts, because I use the policy rate, inflation, and the non-performing that is going to hit the bank and the treasury bill. That's where I come from. So when they say it's going to recover, I don't know what matrices they use. I use these 4 matrices, and I can be on the higher side. And once on the higher side, there's going to have impact on the economy generally.
Doc, finally, we can't leave here without you giving us some tips on how to manage your finances in this very trying time. Just give us about 5.
Well, people say that I'm too conservative. I've always told people that if I have the liquidity, cash, I'll keep some in Forex. Because Forex did not depreciate. If I had, say, 1 million, I would have kept 300,000 equivalent in dollar or pound or euro. Keep it somewhere. Then I'll leave a little bit with the credit unions. Because that place, interest is not high. But your money is assured. Having done, say, 300 there, I'll then go to my bank and lead what an emergency fund, 100,000, where I pay for my children's school fees. Anything that is left, I won't even go for treasury bill. I'll go for bank fixed deposit.
But not a lot of people know about the bank fixed
deposit. Because the financial literacy is very challenging in Ghana. And I hope in some time you people will develop programs like financial literacy. The gap is very, very huge. I mean, your colleague was there when I was speaking that dead chicken. When I say dead human beings. A lot of people didn't know that there is a correlation between what we export and how it affects the city. And I told them that you import everything, but your currency is going down because you are not exporting more.
You're not producing more.
You are not producing for export, and you are not even adding value to what you produce. People take gold. Let me come back to my gold. The minister says 6.6. I want you to record it. When you check on Bank of Ghana record, it's 863 million, which is equivalent to 13% of the 6.6 billion. What contract did we sign?
So there's a disparity of about 5 billion somewhere.
You cannot even, not disparity. The investors brought in their money. We are not saying that you can't take your money. But if you brought money and you are taking a whooping 5-point-something billion, and the thing is not for 1 year, you are doing it for about 10 years. That is why I drew, if you heard it, I said, let us visit what happened in Botswana. Botswana had a similar challenge as we have with gold. And don't forget, Botswana is the leading diamond producer in Africa. That one, I have it on record. And Anglo-American has been doing 10%, 20%. This year, they called them to order. This year, minimum of 30%. Next year, 40. Next year, 50. You've been doing it for 10 years. All that you've taken your money. If you don't do that, pack and go. You know, they say, yes, sir. They've agreed. So if we begin to be very proactive with the mining companies, we're not going to suffer. Because you see, if you get 30% of the 6 billion, it's close to 2 billion.
Yeah.
Now, remittances, if we can track all the remittances, the difference between Bank of Ghana and World Bank is 2.4 billion. If you track it, add it to the gold. Is it not better than the IMF loan?
So you wouldn't need 3 billion?
You don't need it. But you see, we are human beings where we don't want to use data and science, and we talk. So I'm saying that for the general comment, the country had to do some of these things. They should throw out their pride and get expertise. We have very fantastic expertise. I don't want to mention them. People who have managed Anglo-Ashanti to the top level. If you put him in a committee to help us to negotiate, they will do it. When AGC were mining, it wasn't the 20% and 80%. He was doing it. Go and ask them. They were doing it about 30-70. I think 60-40 to 30-70. Now people are scratching the surface, destroying the environment. And then they will give you only 13%. And you clap. And then there's one called, I don't know the name, you English people. Lithium or what is it?
Lithium.
Yeah.
They found lithium in the West.
I heard a man said Ghana will get 6 billion. Let me quote him. Use it. He's a liar. It depends on the contract. They
would
have said
the lands minister.
Yeah. No, whoever said it. Gold is gold. You mine by 6.6. You got 800. What mathematics are you going to get the 6 billion and get it? You're going to get the same 10%. They will shoot Dr. Mantiao. I want to thank him for educating me on these things. I read a lot about when he writes on I read. He's been saying this and it has gone into the oil.
Yeah.
Oil.
The PIAC reports.
Look, our way we send people to negotiate, either I don't know whether their parochial interests override the national interest. But you see, at the end of it all, Ghana is Ghana. Even if you have so much money, you can spend in America, but at the end of the day, your dead body will come to Ghana to be buried. If you don't even come, your ashes will come. So why don't we do the right thing in Ghana? So for me, savings, a little in forex, a little in emergency fund,
fixed deposit.
You go to your credit union, and then you go to a little fixed deposit. I won't advise you to go for that, my friend's T-bills. No, no, because for me, risk.
Yeah.
You see how I've spread my risk, so that when the credit union even collapse, I know where I can get. That is what I'm telling you about the failure of risk management on the bank, including the central bank. What risk management policy do they have to do the government debt to that limit? But you see, we have board members there, big men in big cars, big coats. But that is not. You want somebody who will say something different than what other, not to argue with him, but to put your case based on data and science.
Doc, I can't leave here without asking you about the building of the new Bank of Ghana headquarters at Ridge. It's caused some uproar and all of that. You are a banking consultant. What do you make of it?
Thank you very much, Mauli. I think for me, the uproar, I understand people, but if you look at the historical antecedent, this thing was projected, I think, 2020 or 2019. I think they've been making provision to build a property. It is rather unfortunate that it has coincided with the current economic challenges, especially with the Bank of Ghana losses. Apart from that, I don't think there was anything wrong with it. And again, if you go to other countries and see the edifice of their central bank, as I've said, alluded, I went to Zimbabwe, I saw the central bank, I couldn't believe it. Although the timing is wrong, but the whole idea of having a new structure is not bad, because we've had it since independence. And if you see when EcoBank came to Ghana, where it was, look at the edifice he's put over. Calm. So for me, it only came at meeting at different times, but the idea, and I'm sure Bank of Ghana would have actually also provided for it. So let us give them space so that we don't bring old issues into the new wine. If you bring the new wine into old wine, you make things very difficult. I'm sure they had it in plan before this crisis came. This crisis, maybe they should have anticipated it, but even if they anticipated, they have started the building. So I wouldn't like to talk too much on it. And I believe that times are changing. They will look at it and do a good job that befits the country. That is what I will say for the time being.
Doc, thank you so much. I've had a very interesting conversation with you. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot too as well. I've been speaking with Dr. Richmond Ato Essien. He's a banking consultant. We've been talking all things about the banking sector, development, the debt exchange program, interest rates, treasury bills, and among many others. He's been my guest on this week's edition of BizTech. Before we go, don't forget to log on to our website, www.ghanaweb.com. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Ghanaweb. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ghanaweb TV. Once again, I am Maoli Aholmega. Many thanks for watching.